Okay, very good afternoon to everybody for joining this call. This is a partnership between Innovation for Change and the Pacific Youth Council with Dr. Gaylene, who's a qualified psychologist. So the discussion that we are going to have today is how to deal with stress and anxiety during COVID-19 in the Pacific, and also the recent tropical cyclone that was experienced by some of the Pacific Island countries such as Vanuatu, Fiji, and Tonga. So with this, let's begin the discussion. And I would request Dr. Gaylene to start.
Hi, can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Sushil, for the kind introduction. So just a little bit of a background about me. I've been an academic in a previous life, and now I work for an organization that looks after the welfare and needs of professional rugby players. So a lot of my work is based around young people, around young men and women who are trying to manage a professional rugby career and at the same time trying to figure out what they want to do post-professional career. And that's something that we're all trying to work with at the moment, is around this whole understanding of how COVID is going to affect future professional careers. So this topic is a timely one because I've been dealing with it on a daily basis with the people that I work with, and I understand that there are certain questions that people have sent in, and maybe if we go through that, or would you prefer me to talk a little bit more about something else before we get into the questions, Sushil?
Maybe you could do a slow introduction on some of the things, maybe a brief overview on how some of the things that you have experienced yourself lately, and then we could start the discussion with some of the questions that have come in. So it sort of sets
Sure.
the scene. Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, right now there's a lot of uncertainty around the world, not only in the Pacific, but it's a global uncertainty. It's a time of unprecedented anxiety, really. That's what it is, because nobody seems to understand what the future is going to be like, what it's going to look like. The suddenness of the coronavirus hitting, global population, the powerlessness of it, because a lot of people feel that they can't control what they're going through. And one of the symptoms, or one of the not symptoms, or one of the consequences of it in this part of the world is the job losses. A significant amount of people have lost their jobs, have lost their livelihoods. And that's where it's not going to be seen now, but I think later on down the line, in another 2 or 3 months, where you're going to see a lot of people experiencing acute stress disorders, high levels of anxiety, as you start to figure out, okay, what's next? Because right now everyone's just trying to survive day to day, but then it's going to be long-term survival that's going to hit people, which is going to cause a lot of problems. So what we're seeing now is this unprecedented anxiety. We're seeing a lot of worry. Now, what is worry? Now, what is worry to you, Sushil? When you think about worry?
Deadlines, the cost of living going up, how do we manage certain things, like can we afford this, do we want to spend money on a need or a want, or do I buy a new technology? So the worries, because all of a sudden I feel that the way I knew how to live my life has changed. All of a sudden I've become more constricted in the four walls that I live in. Yes, I like living with my family, but now that we experience with them, like you're spending about 24 hours a day with them in a closed space, it becomes a bit of a challenge. So
Too
because
much.
everybody, you know them physically, you know them emotionally, but even then what they're going through internally becomes, so worry is a whole different set of combination factors, like external and internal, that works out. Yes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. What with worry, because when you start worry about as those things that you mentioned, that worry builds into anxiety, and the anxiety can be, you know, something simple like just worrying about what might seem simple. Sorry, what worrying about, um, you know, what you're going to do tomorrow, because you may be confined. Some of the listeners may be confined at home because of the lockdown restrictions. So what are you going to do tomorrow? I'm going to do the same old thing again. And that kind of plays on people's minds, that worry, that anxiety, and starts to build up. And just to go back to worry, one of the things about worry is that if you start to worry about things that, you know, it's hypothetical, it's not a real problem, it's hypothetical. For example, will I have lecturers to teach me next semester? Will I have a job to go back to? It's hypothetical, it's in the future. Those kind of hypothetical worries, they're the ones that can cause most of the anxiety that people feel. So, you know, what's going to happen 2 months down the road? What's going to happen 3 months down the road? Will I be able to give my children a Christmas with presents and good food? You know, those hypothetical worries, those are the ones that can cause the most anxiety. The other type of worry, which a lot of people are currently going through right now, is what I call the real problems. The real problems, such as, you know, making sure you have food on the table, making sure you pay your bills, making sure that the kids are doing their homework. And if you're a young person listening in, making sure that, you know, you're able to balance your schoolwork with your chores that your mom has set out for you to do. So it's finding a balance between, you know, what you need to do and what is required of you is a real world, or sorry, a real problem. So that you have these two types of problems. You have a real problem, and then you have your hypothetical problem, which is a hypothetical worry. And as I said earlier, those hypothetical worries can become very problematic and cause anxiety down the line for people. So right now, as I said, it's about worry. It affects your well-being. So what is well-being? My next question is, what is well-being? So maybe somebody in your audience can answer that question. What is well-being to people? It's an interesting one, well-being. We use it quite often. You know, we use it a lot. And so how, you know, this about well-being and what is well-being. So what is well-being to you?
For me, I usually think about well-being as having, being coherent, or having coherence in all the different aspects of myself. Um, like my emotional, physical, spiritual, all these different aspects of my life to be coherent. And that's how I see well-being.
Thank you, Tahira. Yes, it's a cohesiveness, everything sort of being balanced. Your physical, your mental, your emotional, your financial, your spiritual well-being is all connected, your social well-being as well. So there's a lot of factors involved in well-being, and we talk about well-being pillars and, you know, making sure you're balanced in all these pillars. The way also I like to think of well-being is your achievements, your purpose in life, your meanings, your meaningful pursuits, your pleasure, what things that give you pleasure, for example. What is it? Is it engaging in sports? Is it reading a book? Is it helping other people? Is it lifting people up, empowering people, and having those connections between the people that are close to you, that are dear to you, that you love, you know, those family connections, those friendships, those associations. So when we think of mental well-being, we think of all those pillars and how they're all connected and how we maintain balance. And the focus is really on making sure that within those pillars that we feel that we're achieving something, we have that purpose, we are connected, and we feel a sense of pleasure, of feeling good about ourselves and about what we're doing to, say, make changes in the world or in our little environment that we work in. So just to go back to worry, when we're worried and it's excessive, we're worrying about hypotheticals and we're worrying about problems, it can affect our well-being. And it can affect our ability to cope because we're worrying about things that may be a little bit out of our control, and we're not implementing positive coping strategies to help us get through the day-to-day living or day-to-day existence. So I brought well-being in. At this time, we need to look at balance in terms of our mental and physical and social and financial well-being. If we are unbalanced in one of those areas, it can cause problems down the line. So for example, if someone is worrying about a hypothetical problem, but they're actually real problems that they're not taking care of, so they're worried about that, it's excessive worry. They're quite, they're anxious about it because whatever it is, it may be a job issue. They're finding it difficult to cope. They may turn to what they know best, and that may be drinking excessive amounts of yangona. It might be comfort eating. It might be excessive amounts of alcohol. And as a result of that, it can cause other problems down the line. So in terms of well-being, because of these other problems down the line, you don't have that balance within all the pillars. What you do have is you have an imbalance, and you may create for yourself more problems that you may not have control over. And so that's why it's important when we think about this time that we make sure we look after our well-being, making sure we're balanced in all those areas, making sure that we keep things in perspective. We're not focusing too much on the hypotheticals, but we're focusing on what is real and what we can deal with and what we can control. Because when we spend too much time thinking of the hypotheticals, that's when we cause more problems for ourselves. And we also have to make sure during this time that we look at how we are coping. Okay, how we are coping. It's really important that you need to reflect on how you're coping. Are you sleeping too much? Are you not eating enough? Are you craving specific foods? For example, when we are stressed, we like fatty foods or sweet stuff, all the lovely things that make you feel good, right? So when you eat sugar, lots of sugar, you feel good. That's just how our body operates. And when you eat sugar or drink sugar, you start feeling good, and you think, this is something I can, it makes you feel good, and you keep partaking in the sugar eating and the sugar drinking because it's making you feel good. So it's important we look at our coping. If your coping strategies or whatever it is causing you to have some problems, either you're not sleeping, because that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people find is that during stress, under a lot of stress, their sleeping becomes irregular. If you're an insomniac, you may not experience this at all because it's a regular thing. It's a normal thing for you. But for those of you who can sleep just like that, have no problems with sleep, you have proper, what we call regular sleep, good sleep, you're sleeping 6 to 8 hours a night, you may find that your sleep is affected. Why? Because you're worried, because you're worried. Or you might find that you are engaging in sort of repetitive behaviors that are really not normal behaviors, your normal behaviors. So it might be finding that you're cleaning out cupboards, or you engaging in a lot of cleaning because it's a repetitive behavior and it's making you feel good. You're not tackling the problem, you're sort of parking it and you are doing something else to help you to feel good. or you might be engaging in a lot of yangona drinking or alcohol. So that's why I'm saying you need to reflect on your coping strategies during this time to help you manage what's going to come, what's going to lay ahead, because we're in about 2 months now. We've got a lot more living to do until they find that vaccine. And so we need to change the way we deal with how we operate post-COVID. So look at your coping strategies. If it's harmful to you, you need to do something about it. So some of the things that I think are what we call positive coping strategies would be have a routine. When we don't have a routine during a time of uncertainty, we feel out of control. And some people say, oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. And they feel that way is because they don't have any structure in their day. And when you're under a lockdown or when you're under restrictions, movement restrictions, the urge to go out becomes more prominent in your mind because you're thinking of all the things that you want to do. And so it's important to have a routine. One of the things I talk to with our players who are still in lockdown in the UK and in France is during the week, you have a specific routine, but in the weekend, change it up because otherwise it's going to get boring. So do something different in the weekend, rather than what you've continued to do during the week. So it's important to have a routine. The routine gives you focus, keeps you organized, you're in control, you're making good use of your time. You're not sitting around watching TV or you're not sitting around watching Netflix. That's not healthy. Okay, it's not healthy. When you start, it's okay for like one day when you feel that you need to do it, do it. If it's a one-day thing, fine, because sometimes you just need to switch off. You just need to watch some, I was going to say a word there, but I thought I better not, something on Netflix, and that is, you don't have to think about it and you just enjoy. You're in the moment, you're enjoying it, and that's fine. But if you're doing that every day, you're finding that you become sluggish physically and also mentally sluggish. And so when that happens, your mind starts to go into deep, dark places where it normally doesn't go. So it's really important that you need to pull yourself up off the couch or off the bed and get into a routine. I would also suggest that if anyone who's listening who doesn't have an exercise routine, it's important that you think about one, and it could be just something like getting up in the morning and greeting the sun with a big stretch and, doing a few stretches, or if you like gardening, go outside and do some gardening. And it might be just, when I say gardening, it could be gardening for vegetables to help feed your family, or it could be because you like flowers and you want to have a pretty garden out in the front. So get moving. When we sit and we're not connected, that's when the mind goes. So it's important to move. Another good coping strategy is to stay connected. And thank goodness, I know this sounds really bad what I'm about to say. Thank goodness it happened during this time because we have the internet. I think it would be really bad if we didn't have the internet because we will be so stuck in our little bubbles. So if this, one of the things that has happened, I think COVID has allowed us to explore ways in which we can stay connected, even though it's online. And that's really, really important, staying connected with your family, your friends, your associates, your work colleagues. It's really, really important. And even though you don't you can't physically be in the room, but you can do Zoom, for example, or you can pick up the phone and call them. But it's so important to stay connected. It just gives you that connection with another human being. We are social animals, and we need to be connected to the people that we care deeply about, or we work with, or whatever that connection is. You need to stay connected. Don't isolate yourself to the point where you are not communicating or connecting with other human beings. Another good, so I've talked about routines and exercise and sleep and making sure you're getting regular sleep. Another good coping strategy is, it's more of a reflection type of strategy, is where you reflect on what causes you to go into a negative mental space, what causes you to think negatively about the future, or that causes the worry. So it's important to understand what triggers it. That's what I'm saying. So what is the trigger? Is it because you heard something on TV? I don't know about you, but in the early days, I became obsessed with the news, you know, and watching it on TV or online, and get up in the morning. The first thing I did was go to the phone. You know, the last thing you did at night was find out what was happening. And that's actually not good for you, because you're constantly feeding your mind with a lot of sad and terrible stories that is out there. So understand your triggers. You know, if it's the news that triggers you to feel a certain way, then plan your news watching time or news reading time. So now for me, I would do, you know, watch the news or whatever over breakfast. That's it. The rest of the day is having to be productive, and that way it cuts down the anxiety, or cuts down the worries, you know, the hypothetical worries that I was starting to think about and feel at the time. So know your triggers, and then once you understand what triggers you, take active steps to overcome them. And those steps are entirely up to you. There's no one right way. It might be just a little tweak, like changing your diet, or your TV watching time, or your exercise, or your sleep, whatever it is. Just take the time to make that change, and you'll feel good about yourself. And it may be, as I said, one or two things. The other thing is around, it's a coping strategy, but it's also just something I would say common sense kind of thing, is during this time of uncertainty and anxiety, don't make any major decisions that are based on fear. It's important that you have a clear understanding of what you are getting into. The reason I say that, because I've experienced with groups of people I work with, where the fear of the hypothetical worry, it becomes that fear, and the fear of the unknown. And people are starting to, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. So they're starting to make decisions that are going to affect their life and livelihood, rather than sort of just sitting, waiting, doing things slowly, thinking about, you know, the what ifs and planning for the what ifs. They're jumping straight right, you know, into it. And that can actually cause more problems, because you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to make a change or to do something, you know, because you feel that that's the way you can gain control. So I would say in this situation that it's always important during this time not to make any major decisions that are based on fear and worry. Do your homework before you make that decision. Yeah, I've been talking quite a bit. I just realized. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Galen, and thank you, Sushil, for organizing this event. My name is Ray Pentas, also the part of the Pacific Youth Council. I'm currently based out of Auckland, studying at the Massey University. Originally, I'm from Fiji and also from Kiribati. So I've lived in both countries for quite a number of years. In fact, my childhood was really all in Fiji, and my working life was in Kiribati. At the moment, I'm studying, completing my final study here in Auckland. And one of the things that I'm involved in at the moment is helping establish a charitable trust by the name Kiribati Aotearoa Diaspora Directorate. And the charitable trust was conceived in 2018. And then we had several dialogue with our Kiribati leaders here in New Zealand. And we eventually had a validation trip to Kiribati by two of our members to explore the topics around, you know, the hardships and the issues that our migrants face while in transition in New Zealand. And a lot of case studies came out of it, which saw the formation of CAD, if I may call it in short, and it was registered in 2019 in November. When the organization was established, we came up with several key services, and there was 5 services that we came up with, and one was referrals and advocacy, because we understand that our people have hardship trying to navigate their pathways to secure their well-being while they're here in New Zealand, and quite often it's quite draining and quite stressing, and it takes a lot of our people are really depressed and anxious that the first few weeks while they're in New Zealand, they're quite overwhelmed by just transiting. We set up the helpline. It's called Te Meroro. Te Meroro is a Kiribati word for dialogue. It's a dialogical method that we employed using this service, and this service was established when New Zealand went into level 4 lockdown. So what the service does is that it accepted calls from Kiribati communities around Aotearoa, and we navigate them using a framework that we developed, and it's called Kuana framework. And the Kuana framework explores the well-being of our people using that Meroro narrative approach to dialogue. And the threefold elements of this framework is health, te Maori, which explores the life and social well-being of individuals, families, and communities. The second element is te Roi, which is peace, exploring more environmental and political factors that may affect their stability in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And the third element of this framework is the tapomoa, prosperity. How do we build growth on our communities so that they can prosper economically and build that resilience? And this framework also takes 2 key things in consideration. One is te kati, is an understanding of our cultural protocol and language. And I guess as practitioners, even as youth, young people, young leaders, they need to be competent and understand, the basic of te kati, because that's how you would establish rapport with people and have them trust that you can actually help them. We also look at ethics to create what they call in Maori ahurutanga, is the safe space, and creating that space for them to be able to be engaged and contribute. But I think where I'm going in regards to this discussion is around COVID-19. And Dr. Kaylin referred to the triggers. And I think COVID-19 was one of the biggest trigger of all the issues that we came across with our communities. We did a report after we went into level 3 last week, and the statistic was really interesting. We helped around 20 families and individuals. They were from Auckland region, Otago, and the Rodney region up in Warkworth, a bit further north of Auckland. And the average call per person was around 2 hours. And we employed that framework to explore and, to meroro, to discuss with them. And a lot of the COVID-19 alone triggered a lot of issues. And some of those issues were rent, loss of income, food, being homeless. It also spiked domestic violence because families were locked in homes for a longer period of times with their children and their husbands who may have had that abusive relationship. But because of lockdown, that had also triggered and spiked domestic violence. We were fortunate there was nothing related to harm, suicide, depression. But when we rated, how they felt, and it's basically just an assessment of where they are at that point of time. And most of them rated being extremely overwhelmed because some of them could not get support through wage subsidy. And that's when we come in and help facilitate through the Ministry of Pacific People and Ministry of Social Development to advocate for them, because one of the reasons it's hard for them to do it is because of language barrier. So while we have our own framework that culturally is responsive to our people, we also employed other theories around, you know, using Brenner's theory of, you know, ecological system, where we actually look at all layers of, you know, the issues that they are going through, as well as employ the Maslow theory of basic needs. And then we based our assessment on, you know, rating the risk of these families and who are quite vulnerable during lockdown. Majority of the referrals were permanent resident, and also we had referrals with families coming in through the Pacific Access category that were trying to settle in, but unfortunately they got kind of stuck because of the imposition of lockdown, and they, you know, some of them were lost their accommodations, and were really stuck during level 4. So one of the projects that we came up with through one of our partner organization is establishing, there was a grant that came out from the Ministry of Social Development. In fact, New Zealand is quite proactive during lockdown, and one of the community grant that came out was building a project, a Pacific Island project that can respond in times of crisis like COVID-19. So we came up because over the first weekend of lockdown, level 4, we received one domestic violence reporting. And what we found out is that a lot of these social service providers around domestic violence in Aotearoa, New Zealand, do not really have that deep outreach to our values and cultures. And all the assessment and all these, you know, vetting processes is really complicated for people. It can take up to 3 days to actually refer people to shelters. In that period, victims of domestic violence have been influenced by the perpetrator's family to culturally reconcile. And by the end of by comes the 3rd day when they call us back to say that they've secured a place to shelter the victim. She's saying that, no, actually I've forgiven my husband because the mom or the dad had done that, you know, cultural apologies or kaparapuri. So I just wanted to share like a bit of the work that we do right now, because we also had like other things happening within CAD that actually help us to rethink how we provide our services in times of crisis like this, and also having that shift onto online engagement. And it's not just for the sake of moving online because of the restrictions, because of COVID-19, but actually ensuring that you're providing a service in the most safest way. Because of course, you know, you could be doing counseling online. People can walk in and listen to conversations, which will compromise that safe space for the client. So some of the things that, you know, we do, we also rethink our methods of engagement. But I tell you, when we talk about the stress and the depression, it's actually what our minds are feeding on, especially in times of crisis. Negative thoughts, negative posts on Facebook, you know, negative coconut wireless stories that are going around. It really impacts our families, because what they consume during the day or during that week really has implications on their behaviors and how they change within that period. I don't know, I've shared a lot, Dr. Kaylin, but I just wanted to share like a more community-based practicality around these issues. And to be honest, we're quite excited about all of these things happening, because we have formed that really close collaboration and relationship with the Ministry of Pacific People, Social Development. And people manning these CAD offices is all young people ranging from 20 to 30 years. And that's how proactive and why I encourage young people, because they've got the energy, they've got the the creativity, and they can think about innovation, bringing innovation and co-creating methodologies, interventions, approaches that are culturally responsive and actually works for our people. So yeah, just thought to share that out, and lovely to meet you all.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate what you are doing. It's really important. What you shared with us is really important about the young people getting involved and volunteering in terms of the energy that they have. The other thing that came to mind is when I was listening to you is the issue of resilience. You talked about resilience. In this time, people who are able to bounce back because they've got really strong coping strategies, they will be able to adapt really quickly to the uncertainty and to any stressors such as job loss that has come their way. They'll be able to do that really quickly. But most people who have other problems that they have to deal with, it's not just the food or the rent, but there's just multiple problems, layer after layer after layer. And if they're tired, distressed, have a pre-existing condition, and that's just going to add more problems onto them, and they'll find it really hard to bounce back. So you're talking about resilience. I had a discussion with a friend about this the other day, and it's an important word, but sometimes when we use the word resilience, we expect people to be really, really strong when they don't feel it, especially during this time. And I always say to people, it's okay to not feel okay. If things are really getting you down, seek help, but it's okay to not feel okay, that there is help around, that you can access. So resilient is a word that came to mind when you were sharing, and I wish you well with your with what you are doing in Aotearoa. Does anyone else have any questions before I go? I'm looking at the time, and I'm aware that there are some questions that were sent through, and I thought I better just quickly touch on those questions because there are some people who took the time to do that. So does anyone have any questions before we get into the questions I have?
No, I think so, Gayleen, for now, you could start with some of the questions that you already have. And then before we wrap up in the 5 minutes before we wrap up, then if there's any other further pending, then we could do it and then take it to decide the next steps from there.
Okay, thank you. So one of the questions is high schoolers. How can they stay occupied during lockdown, particularly with the restrictions and in place? As I said earlier, was in terms of a coping strategies routine. Now, probably a high schooler thinking a routine is old fuddy-duddy stuff, but it's really important. It's just simple things like writing things down, like get up in the morning and make my bed and prepare breakfast for the family. It might be doing the dishes. But when you have it written down and it's a routine that you can focus on, it keeps you organized. That helps you stay a little bit in control of your surroundings. The routine I would also suggest should have if you've got school and there's a dedicated time in the day that you need to set aside for school, you need to do that. It's important that you create your routine, that you talk to your parents about it. So for example, mom and dad, in the morning between 7 and 10, I will do these things for the family. And then from 10:30 to 1:30, I have school. And that means I need to go and do my schoolwork. And then in the afternoon, I can dedicate that time to family chores again, or I have to go out out into the day and do some work in the garden, or do some exercise, that whatever it is that you do. if you share that with your family and the routine is very clear, people will understand what you're doing, and they may not see, you know, if you're studying, they may not see it as you being selfish with your time, but you are doing productive with your time, and you have to do those things because it's what you need to do. So it's important to have a routine. Once you finish, say, your schoolwork or something that you needed to achieve in that day, then you can use a reward system. So for example, your reward might be spending 2 hours on Facebook, because during the day you had all these other things you did, and in the evening you can sit down and go on Facebook or watch a movie or whatever it is. So it's important, a young person needs to also build in rewards into their routine. Another thing that a young person can do to help them stay motivated and occupied is to learn a new skill, or learn something that you can easily do at home. It might be learn to bake, for example. I don't know about you, but I saw a lot of people baking, you know, wanting to bake and picking up new ways of cooking, etc. For me, it was gardening. And I was just saying to my husband the other day, if my mother and my grandmother would see me now, they'll be laughing, believe me. So I've got into gardening. This morning, I got up early because I had an early morning Zoom, and I went out and checked my seedlings that I planted. And I was really excited to see the little seeds sprouting out of the ground. So things like that. Do something that you wouldn't normally do in usual times. And that just helps you stay motivated, but it also gives you pleasure and you feel a sense of achievement. So remember, we talked about those aspects of well-being: achievement and pleasure and connection. So achievement and pleasure was ticked off with gardening for me. Some people like to write. If you're a person who likes to write and you're a young person, journal, or use the opportunity maybe to write a movie, a script, or a cartoon, or something like that. So use the opportunity to start exploring aspects of yourself that you may not have had the time to do before. And, you know, again, it's all part of your routine, your day-to-day routine. So I'm not saying, you know, everyone just goes off and does their own thing, because there's chores to do, but include in your routine the things that make you feel happy and that you need to tick off, like your schoolwork. And the other thing I would say to young people is practice, if you can, being grateful and thankful. Gratitude there's so much power in gratitude. It is a powerful way of feeling thankful about your existence. Even though things are really tough, just be thankful that, you know, you're getting through the day. You're picking up, you're doing the stuff that you need to do to get through the day. So practice gratitude if you can. Live in the present. It's important to be mindful of being in the now, being in the present. Because remember, I talked about the types of worries. So when we start going into the hypotheticals, that can cause a lot of anxiety. So it's important to live in the present and find that purpose that I mentioned earlier. And volunteer if you can. If you can't do it physically, you know, you might be able to help in other ways. For example, in Fiji, that barter system Facebook page that Marlene Dutta has created has just been amazing, absolutely amazing, to see people go out of their way to help others in need. And I hope that it continues. But one of the things I've picked up there is that people are willing, even though they don't have much themselves, they are willing to give. And it's an act of kindness. It's an act of supporting another human being so that they can live in dignity. It's also, for me, seeing some people on that page stepping out of their comfort zone and giving to another person who they may not ever come into contact with, you know, in the past or, you know, in the future, but they're just doing something that they feel good about. So practicing kindness, practicing gratitude, giving to others, and faith. You know, we are a community that believes strongly in faith and spirituality. So if you are connected to your faith in any way, it's important to include that as part of your routine, a part of your coping strategy, because again, it's all part of your well-being, your spiritual well-being. You're feeding your well-being, you're feeding your spiritual well-being. So that was one of those questions, and I hope it makes sense to young people. The other question was around the multiple stresses. You know, we've got Corona and you've got Harold. For some countries in the Pacific, we're in Fiji, Vanuatu, Solomons, Tonga. We had a double banger come April, where we had Corona. People were dealing with coronavirus and trying to learn how to behave and, you know, not touch your face and wash your hands and social distancing. Those were all new things that people had to learn. And so everyone was trying to comprehend that. And then Harold hits. And for many people in the Pacific, that was for some people, sorry, not many, for some people, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back, because they just lost everything completely. Now, how do they cope with that after? It's going to be interesting. But, you know, again, the resilience in people will come through. People get on with it. Just pick up and get on with it. A lot of people will do that because we've experienced so many cyclones in the past. But one of the things we need to be mindful of is that in the future, these people who just gotten on with it because they've had to, you just have to get up and keep going, because if you don't, things won't happen. You know, you have to get food, you have to rebuild your house. In the future, when I say in the future, maybe 3 months from now, when things settle down a bit, that's when the things like acute stress disorder starts to hit in, because they've been under so much stress trying to survive that they haven't really taken care of their own well-being, because they're trying to do things just to survive, to get through the day, or to help their children, or to help the elderly in their family. That's when, so 3 months from now, that's when you might see these individuals who were resilient at the time, finding it difficult just to get through. And they may experience things like constantly weeping, which is grief, because they've lost things. And that's another thing about coronavirus and Harold hitting at the same time. If you've lost your job, if you lost your house, you are grieving. And that's something that's not talked about. So you might find these people will feel that they're weeping all the time, they're forgetful all the time. They feel that they're losing their minds. These are symptoms of grief and also acute stress disorder. So the mental health of these individuals later on down the line needs to be considered, and rather than just now, because everyone's just trying to get through, but later on down the line because of these multiple stressors. Ray talked about domestic violence. We've already seen the increase here in Fiji. And, just the other day, the Minister of Women and the Fiji Women's Crisis Center were talking about the increase of domestic violence, because the women were locked in with their partners. As families are feeling more stressed because maybe the income is not regular, or there's sickness as well in the family, or finding it difficult to pay the bills, you may see a lot more people becoming aggressive and violent towards those who they love. And it's because of the frustration. You know, we say in psych, we talk about frustration leads to more conflict if you don't put a stop to it, if you don't stop and think about what you're doing, if you let your emotions go, you can become violent when you're not normally like that. Then if you are drinking, if you're not looking after your health, if you're not sleeping properly, if you're not eating properly, and your mood is all over the place because of those things and because of the worries, and it can just compound problems even further, and you may lash out. So there may be people who've never ever been violent before have suddenly become violent because of the situation they're in. But yeah, going back to that domestic violence, what Ray said, it's a lot of the countries now are reporting high rates of domestic violence because of people being locked down and are frustrated. So coping, I talked about some of the things that you can do, being productive, have a routine, learn a new skill, stay connected, watching what you feed your mind. That's important. We talked about the news, and watching too much TV or Netflix is not good for you if you're not moving. Limit your alcohol and your yangona use. And another coping strategy is, because once you know your triggers, you're able to deal with it. So, know your triggers, take active steps to deal with it, and watch your money during this time. As a coping strategy, it's important to have maybe some targets around savings, because you just never know. A lot of people lost their jobs initially, particularly those in the tourism industry here in the Pacific. But a lot of those associated organizations and industry around tourism, they may start feeling the pinch 3 months from now, and then there may be further job losses. So we have to be very careful how we use our money. We have to be mindful of that. And the last one I would say is take care of yourself, the sleeping, the eating, the exercise, and your family. So it's important that if you have a small family, if a young family, that you look after your family as well, particularly the children. And then just to end on coping, it's the word nowhere, Nowher. It's, if you think about nowhere, you think about it being an unknown, no place, non-existent. And then you change nowhere to now here. If you just move the letters around, now here. So nowhere to now here. Now here, it's about here. It's about the known. It's about the present time. And when you do that, if you change nowhere to now here, it changes your mindset. It changes the way you start to think about, say, the future, or what you have to do now and in the here. It makes you more present. It makes you more mindful. And if you just do that, just one little thing, changing the way you think from a nowhere, I'm hopeless, going nowhere, to what can I do now and here? What's the now and what's here that I can manage? It's a control thing. It's controlling what you can control. It's exerting effort into what you control. There are lots of things you can't control. Don't spend your time worrying about it. For example, what's on social media? There's a lot of rubbish on social media. You don't need to listen to that. What do you know? What is now? What is here? What can you control? That's what you focus on. Your family, that's what you focus on. All that other rubbish is just noise. So it's important to know when to engage in social media in a meaningful way and when not to. Opportunities. This is a time for opportunities. It's a time for resetting. For a lot of people, it's a time for resetting. They feel that it's a time to take it to the next level or change the way they do things, change it up. And so it's important that you focus, if you're thinking about resetting and you're thinking about changing the way you do things, and it's important that you look at this opportunity to adapt and what you can do now to help you plan for the future. And just the last thing I'll say is, if you're feeling anxious right now, if you're feeling concerned about the future, make peace with your emotions. Don't put pressure on yourself. Look at what you're doing. How can you make some small active steps to make some changes that will help you be beneficial to you to balance your well-being, so that you are worrying less about the unknowns, focusing on the here and the now, and you're being kind to yourself, which is really, really important, that we need to be kind to ourselves during this time. Vivian, do you want me to do the breathing exercise?
Yes, please. I love that exercise.
Okay. All right, everyone. So Vivian's asked me to do the breathing exercise, and it's actually a coping strategy, and I do it all the time. So whenever I feel anxious or whatever, I do a self-soothing thing. I just kind of like rub my hands. So that just reminds me to stay here in the now. I do that. Some of you might want to, touch your hair or rub your elbow or your knees or your thighs. Yeah, I notice you got a new cut there, Miss Costa. You know, you do things, yeah, you self-soothe. So maybe you might get a pen and you might be on the pen. So that's a self-soothing technique. And at the same time, you breathe. And okay, just to go back with the breathing, when you are tense, so when you're stressed, you get tense, your muscles tighten up. And when that happens, you're not breathing properly. You're not breathing from your lungs. It's more up here, shallow. And you're not getting enough oxygen around your body. So, you know, you're just feeling a bit off in a way. So breathing. We're breathing to remain calm. We're breathing to connect our mind and body. We're breathing to have clear mind, have focus, and it helps reduce stress. That's what breathing is. So just a little exercise, a lot of science behind it. There is a proper name for it, but we're not going to go into that now. It's just something you can do to help. Okay, so I'd just like you to relax in your chair. You know, put your hands down, relax. Okay, so we're going to breathe in. We're going to breathe in through the nose, nice and slowly into your stomach and lungs area. And we're going to hold for 4. Count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to exhale really slowly through the mouth. And we're going to do it 3 times. Okay, only 3 times. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. One more time. Inhale. All the way in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. Nice and slow. Okay, you can do that on the bus, you can do it in the bath, you can do it lying down, you can do it anywhere, right? So just brings you back to the here and now, helps you stay calm, connects your mind and body so it's not going over the place. And lastly, be kind to yourself. Is that what you wanted, Vivian, with the breathing? Anything else?
That was exactly it.
Okay.
And the reason that I asked Galen to do the breathing exercises, that I've actually had experience with it, both as a high school teacher, but also personally. And I think that you can feel that even when you inhale, your shoulders, you feel your shoulders actually working with it. And so when you do exhale, your shoulders just go all the way down. And so it's just a nice small stress relief that can be done anywhere without you looking weird. I found that it's always been really, really helpful. So thank you so much for that, Galen.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody. I have a feeling we might just cut off automatically because it's already 1:59. So once again, I would like to take this opportunity. I'm Sushil Patel from Innovation for Change. We had Dr. Galen as our specialist on how to deal with anxiety and stress, and members of the Pacific Youth Council and the Pacific Youth Council tech team. Thank you so much for joining the call. And hopefully we can do this again some other time as well. Thank you so much for your questions and the discussions that we have had, and look forward to hopefully seeing this recording online. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sushil. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. Stay safe.
Thank you.